channel. I'm your host Osa. Before we get started with today's video that we're going to react to, don't forget to like the video. So just like the video, put a comment on the video about anything at all really. I might be a little bit more specific at the end, but absolutely like the video. It doesn't really take too much just to hit the like button real quick for me, alright? And also follow us on Instagram. We actually have an Instagram page that's been going on for a while now. I put the Instagram page, I think it's called Spade. I think I'll put it right here or whatnot. I don't know if it's gonna fit it right here. I think it's gonna be right here. Yeah, right there. That's the call it Spade, call underscore it, call underscore a on the Spade. It's our Instagram page for any more content from the channel. And I'll leave it in the corner right here. So somewhere here. It'll be somewhere. I think it'll be right here. Yeah, right here. Be on the corner somewhere so that you guys can go ahead and follow that at the end of this video, or anytime you want, either or. But now I got that out the way. For today's video, I'm gonna do another Thomas Sowell video. This time involving Joe Biden. All right. This one's gonna be a short video, so I'm probably gonna play most of it, if not all. And we're just gonna react to that video completely. All right.
Let me ask you a couple questions. You think judicial activism, doctor, has hurt blacks. Judicial activism of eliminating restrictive covenants in deeds, eliminating segregation in schools, one man, one vote, literacy test. Do you consider those judicially active?
Well, as regards restrictive covenants, I can see no evidence that they did anything other than make some people feel good because it was symbolic. As regards desegregation of the school system, that should have been done long before and on a much more sound basis. I've gone into this at great length in previous writings.
But are they?
No. You see, the problem is not whether you believe that school desegregation should have ended. I believe it should have ended long before.
Okay.
George Bork believes it should have ended long before. What he and what I have objected to are the principles used in that decision, because those principles take on a life of their own, and they come back to haunt you in other areas. Obviously, this old phrase, hard cases make bad law, derived from that fact. You dream up a principle to reach this result, and then the principle has a life of its own.
So the principle of desegregating the schools...
No, that wasn't the principle. The principle was the reason that they picked for it. Well,
that's all I'm saying. Okay, the reasons they picked...
Yes.
Desegregating the schools, you and Judge Bork agree were the wrong principles, and they should have not. So the court shouldn't have done that.
No, the court should have done it.
Oh, okay.
Both of us have said the court should have done it.
I see.
And in my case, and I think in his case, the court should have done it a lot sooner.
How?
They should have ruled that it wasn't equal protection of the law, because nobody in his right mind believes that there was equal protection of the law in the Jim Crow era of these school systems.
I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying.
So this is about affirmative action. So I guess the whole entire thing that Thomas was talking to Joe here about was the issue of segregation and why the reasoning behind it was wrong, even though the court system should have already done it, which I totally agree. I mean, Jim Crow laws back then were meant to make black citizens second-class, third-class citizens, and it still has an effect today. Matter of fact, Atlanta just recently passed voting laws, kind of basically making it harder for people to vote. They vote in terms of certain elections, like senator, whatever election you want to put into it, making it more harder for people to vote. Longer lines for longer voting lines for people to vote, as well as not having to have any sort of type of food or water to wait in it. So basically kind of disencouraging people from voting. Since Georgia itself, the Atlanta area had a very big turnout and was actually one of the main states that kind of tilted towards Joe Biden, ironically, to win the presidency.
Now, when they desegregated the D.C. schools, it's clear the 14th Amendment does not apply. Everyone agrees that the 14th Amendment does not apply to the District of Columbia. How would they have done it in the District of Columbia? Should they have just let it stand in the District of Columbia? Segregation?
No, in fact, Senator, it's interesting that you say that, because I've gotten the first thing I ever wrote on a public issue was in November 13th, 1950, in the Washington Star, in which I argued for the desegregation of the D.C. school system. So that
on what principle?
I had not studied nearly as much then as I have 37 years later, and so I hadn't worked it out. Nor do I think that I would want to work it out on the run in front of a large group of lawyers at this very moment in the time that's available.
Well, how about literacy test? Was it judicial?
I see no reason why people shouldn't be literate in order to vote. The question is, if you have a black who comes in with his degree from Harvard and the man behind the desk says, no, you're not literate, you can't vote, then this is what bothers me. People are talking about how judges should be sensitive to this particular group or that particular group. And if that means anything, if it means he's applying the law differently, that's precisely how blacks were held down for generations in the South.
So
by
literacy
applying the law differently.
It's a great point that he made, because what Joe Biden, which is kind of crazy now, thinking about it now, 2021. Back then, he's kind of defending the whole, or questioning him about literacy laws and segregation of and the desegregation of schools. But it's a great point. Literacy test wasn't a problem. It's the people who are giving the test out that are the ones determining who's literate and who's not. If somebody who's behind the desk says, you're not literate, even though he clearly passed whatever questions that they try to give to that person, and the person says you're not literate, that person's not gonna be able to get a chance to vote. Like, what? Same thing with desegregation. Like, desegregation was meant to hold people down because of a certain perception. It wasn't true, but it was meant to put people in a certain place and then control that environment in a way where people are kept down in lower levels and not be able to progress in any type of way, shape, or form. That was Jim Crow. So it's not. So Jim Crow in itself was wrong, but in terms of the literacy test for voting, that's not necessarily an argument there. Of course, people should be literate in order to vote. The problem is the nuance of the people who was giving the damn test. That's going to tell them, yeah, you can vote, you cannot vote. They literally have the final say, regardless of whatever the fuck you put in that paper, right?
Test, as long as they were equally applied, are all right.
Sure.
So I thought you thought. Now, I also want to clarify. I gather from your comments about MIT and Harvard that you don't think there's enough blacks out there who are qualified to fill the number of vacancies allotted for them in those schools. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the word qualified is really misleading.
Well,
the question is whether or not they are like the other students at Harvard and MIT.
Well, okay. Oh, so there's not...
So they may be perfectly qualified. This same student might go through, God help us, I hope there's nobody here from Illinois, Illinois Institute of Technology and do well. But there's no reason why he should fail at MIT. There's no prestige in flunking out of the Ivy League.
I got it. So, but my point is, you believe there are not enough black women and men out there that are the same as white women and men to be able to go through Harvard and MIT.
If there were, it would mean that the whole history of oppression had done no harm whatever.
Well, so the answer is you don't think there are. I just want to figure out what you're saying.
It's not a question of what I think. It's a factual matter.
So factually, you're saying factually there are not enough.
Factually, this study's already been done by Clickguard at Harvard, and the figures are all there. Anyone can look them up.
Okay, no, I just want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what you're thinking. Now,
in terms of that other point, it's the same thing with the literacy laws, right? And Jim Crow laws, right? There's so much nuance to the point where there weren't back then enough people in those circles period, right? Because of the nuance and people who are grading setting the standard, right? And because of that nuance, that person could do completely well in wherever the hell he's at. But he goes to somewhere different where, quote unquote, it's more prestige or whatnot, right? He ends up failing that place. That shouldn't be, even though both sides are more basically on equal footing, that shouldn't be the case, right? That shouldn't be the case at all. And in terms of literacy laws, right? I stand against literacy laws. I'm glad that it's gone. That it's gone completely. So I know back then it was crazy for people. For people to try to vote, try to change their environment, but they can't because of a literacy law, because of the environment that Jim Crow, all of this connects because of the environment that Jim Crow placed them in. They couldn't find the proper education to do it. That's if they didn't have that type of education. Some of them actually did have that type of education. Yet they went to the voting booth, had to take a literacy test to make sure that they're literate to vote. Then after that, they actually did the test and get told no, even though they probably passed the whole thing themselves, right? So I'm glad, because there's too much nuance to that. The people that control that will dictate who the hell can vote, who the hell not to vote. That's nonsense. That's why the literacy test was definitely a very unconstitutional thing and absolutely should not be there. And I'm glad it's not there. All right?
Read all of Judge Bork's cases or any of them? Have you read all of his writings?
I haven't read all of them, but I've been reading them for more than 20 years because I used to teach antitrust economics.
Now, are you part of what they call the law and economics school? You know that? Would you consider yourself part of that school? There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad school. I just wondered where you are.
When I sit down to write, Senator, I don't ask what my label. I don't check my identification tag to see what I am. But I did. One of my books did win a prize as the best book in law and economics in 1980.
Yeah, no, but I mean, there's almost a term of art out there called the School of Law and Economics. Yes. And are you part of that school intellectually? That's all I'm trying to get.
I'm very much interested in the application of economic principles in the law and vice versa.
Right. Now, my time's up. Thank you very much.
The video, for me, depending on the context, I'm not really sure. It kind of just started off with Joe Biden and Thomas Sowell kind of going back and forth. So I'm not necessarily sure the context of what Joe Biden was kind of discussing or whatever that congressional meeting was about, bringing him in. Apparently it was about affirmative action, but, I guess the reasoning for it, per se, and, I mean, Thomas Sowell kind of said it best himself, right? So in terms of it now, there is some debate for it, not too much. But considering the fact that some of these institutions have been out for like years and years on end, personally, I think there's still people who have that old type of mentality that's still running those type of universities, who still have their hands on picking up who the recruiters and who accepts who doesn't get accepted, whatnot. So having that law of affirmative action, I think, is important there. So it still has its uses now. I know there's another video that's out there from Scene Cowell, I think that's his name. I forgot what his name was, but it's another video out there that kind of does that he actually has a good argument for why affirmative action is hurting people more than hurting more students more than helping. But at the same time, the fact that these institutions are run by people who are coming from that type of mindset back then, that still run these universities now, have families who have been indoctrinated with that type of mindset and carrying that over. I think affirmative action still needs to be there. All right? So that's just my thoughts on that. That's it. That's the video. Please like, comment, share the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already. Hit the bell next to the subscribe button if you have, so you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, leave a comment on affirmative action, right? How do you feel about it? You think it's still necessary today, or maybe we should do away with it now since it's 2021, right? All right, until next time, you two, all right? Take care. Up on a quarter century, not up the penitentiary. Some door, take a right. Oh wait, that's the cemetery. Rest in peace to the unknowns and the greats well known. Just knowing that 2 force couldn't get to see his work be fully grown. The most poetic yet humble.